Paul Pierce, a man hated in Toronto and most of the Great White North, said the Toronto Raptors do not have it. It seemed apparently so yesterday in Game 1. Dwight, did they have it at all?
As far as I'm concerned, both teams, put it this way, the game wasn't artful. Both teams shot poorly. If you look at the analytical part of things, I believe the Wizards, they scored 93 points on 96 possessions. The Raptors had 86 points on 98 possessions, so that tells you right there that the percentages were low. What really killed the Raptors yesterday was the defensive rebounding capabilities. They got outclassed there, and when you play defense as well as the Raptors played yesterday, whether you want to say the Wizards shot poorly or not, when you play defense for 19 to 22 seconds and you don't finish the defensive possession by grabbing a rebound, it's quite deflating. And I think that's what happened yesterday. Granted, yesterday, yes, they had a great fourth quarter comeback. Grievous Vasquez and Lou Williams brought them back, got the crowd into the game, whatever the case may be. But when you play defense and you don't corral that rebound to stop a possession on the defensive end, it hurts. And I think it wore them down as the game went on. And the Raptors, who normally can score the basketball with anybody, couldn't put the ball in the hoop yesterday. And when you depend on your defense to get stops and you don't rebound, that is a recipe for disaster. That's what happened yesterday.
Phil, one of the names that came up a lot was, where the heck is James Johnson?
I was asking myself that the entire time. I was watching the game actually with fellow Hoops Lounge writer Mike Grumberg, and I was just seeing James Johnson with his awesome new hairstyle, by the way, just sitting on the bench, and I'm like, they could have really used that toughness and size out there on the wing. I thought at the three, especially when Paul Pierce was, heating up, especially that second quarter, we had 10 points. They really lacked, that presence, and I think Washington took a play out of the Brooklyn Nets playbook out of last year, just saying, put size at the wing and you can hurt the Toronto Raptors. But I thought that comment of the it factor could be taken two ways. Do you get things done? And yes, they were missing a lot of shots, but do you think maybe they were saying how they don't have that transcendent superstar? Because I kind of took the comment like that. Like, they don't have that Kevin Durant guy. They don't have that Paul George guy. And as good as DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry are, they're not at that level. And so do they have the talent necessary to make that next push?
Well, it's interesting that Lowry was, they gambled on him in the third. He got his third foul very early on, and then that hurt him at the end when he couldn't play. They scored, I think, 2 points in all the overtime. It shows that if they have an it, it's him, and he wasn't there. Amir Johnson can only do so much with his banged-up body. Of course, the ongoing issue of Valanciunas never playing in the fourth. A lot of issues going on with the Raptors. Paul Pierce seems to be quite a nemesis for them. Let's move on to the next series because we got 8. Number 2 in the East. The rise once again of Derrick Rose showed up for Chicago versus Milwaukee last night. Did you watch that game, Dwight?
Yes, I did. And it was nice to see Derrick explode to the basket. Didn't look like he had any ill will about himself in terms of coming down awkwardly on his legs, and made some three-point shots last night, which is not the strength of his game, but to truly see if Derrick Rose is back, you want to see him explode to the basket, and he made quite a few of those moves yesterday. The Bulls, to me, are the mystery team of this whole playoff run on both sides, because if they're whole, if they're injury-free, they can come out of the Eastern Conference. And this is not to slight the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Atlanta Hawks, but when you just name the players on that roster, Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler, Mike Dunleavy, Pau Gasol, Joakim Noah, Nikola Mirotic, who's up for the Rookie of the Year, Kirk Heinrich,
and Taj Gibson.
That's 8 players right there that I would take on my team any day of the week.
Doug McBuckets.
Well, yes, but he's not really a factor right now. He could be, okay, but still, those 8 names I just mentioned, if they're healthy and you've got Tom Thibodeau as a head coach, you have as good a chance as any team in the NBA to win a championship.
On the other side of the coin, Milwaukee is a team, I think they had something like 15 wins last year, and then, losing one of their starters, Jabari Parker, and then they traded one another of the starters, Jason Kidd coming in. It's been a turmoil season, yet they got, the 5th, 6th seed in the East. What do you think of these guys?
Well, they kind of stumbled into it, right? They had Brandon Knight, who was playing at an all-star level, and then they traded him for Michael Carter-Williams. There's that roundabout trade involved.
Tyler Ennis too thrown in.
Yeah, but at the same point, they've been playing kind of 500 ball since that trade. And I understand that Jason Kidd likes Carter Williams. He can see himself a bit in him, the tall pass-first point guard. But
he's not a pass first point, but we'll discuss that later.
Yeah, well, I think ideally that's who he creates.
Yes, got you.
But I think Jason Kidd's doing a fantastic job, but I just don't think they have enough ammunition. I think they were really counting on Parker to be that number one or at least number two scorer. And as good as the Greek Freak has been, there's just not enough points. I mean, OJ Mayo would have to go off every game for them to be able to keep up. Mm-hmm. I just think it's a fun team, it's a young team, and they're going to be good going forward, but I think this is a little bit too much of a mountain to climb. As Dwight said, with Chicago finally being healthy, I completely agree. I mean, 4 legitimate big men that they can rotate, play lower minutes to be able to keep them fresh. And let's be honest, the former MVP in Derrick Rose and MIP candidate Jimmy Butler, you have a lot of tools.
And back from the dead Paul Gasol.
No, exactly. I mean, and Tom Thibodeau just knows how to get it done. I mean, we've seen Chicago teams with far less players do more, right? So now that they're finally healthy, I think the sky's the limit for these guys, and especially in the East. I mean, when it comes down to the West, that's another conversation we can have if they make it that far. But the continuity they have that maybe Cleveland is inching towards, and the size that Atlanta doesn't for those half-court sets in the playoffs, I think that's what sets them apart. So I think this is an easy win for Chicago.
Okay, so let's look at the third series in the East. Somehow a team in Brooklyn got into the playoffs. Dwight, I mean, it's something we've discussed before. The top 16 teams in the NBA who do not get in the playoffs, I think it's Adam Silver's going to be working towards getting that. Brooklyn is a third, fourth, fifth-tier team, yet they're playing against the Hawks, who have just kind of come out of nowhere this year and have become one of the elite teams in the league. Do you see Brooklyn pulling any games out at all in this series?
Listen, here's the deal. Because they have Lionel Hoss as a coach, because Darren Williams, Brook Lopez, and Thaddeus Young was acquired at the trade deadline, have been playing better as of late. Jared Jack off the bench as well for them. Can I see them winning one game against Atlanta? Sure I can. Are they going to win the series? No, they're not. Atlanta didn't win 60 games this year by accident. They're too good as a team. They may not have that individual superstar that blurts out you saying, yes, I'm the guy that you got to stop. But their continuity is too good for Brooklyn to beat them. They'll give them some problems because Lopez is good on the interior. One of the Hawks' major flaws is their rebounding on the interior. They don't have that big guy that can stop you. If you talk about Paul Millsap and Al Horford, they don't have a big guy really. Thabo Sefolosha not being there is going to hurt the Hawks down the road, I feel. Maybe not in this series, but down the road, especially if they play against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals. That being said, Brooklyn may win a game, but they're definitely not going to beat the Hawks in a 7-game series,
Phil, one of the interesting stats that I think a lot of people have seen the last week or so, that in the 60 games that they've won this season, not a single player in the Hawks has scored over 30 points. They don't exactly have that it factor either. Do you think they can go deep with the kind of non-star system?
That was a nice pickup. Like, as soon as you were mentioning that, I was thinking, okay, that goes back to Paul Pierce's comment. I think the difference is execution. I think Atlanta executes at a high level consistently.
Spurs East.
Exactly. Whereas Toronto, we saw that whole backcourt shot miserably yesterday, and because of that, they didn't get the 20, 30 points, which would have been that differential that they normally get, would have put them over the top. I mean, look, before they went to overtime, if they had just gotten a couple more baskets, this would be a different ballgame. But I think Atlanta has that team that just, you can't make mistakes against them. But I question, when you slow it down in the playoffs, I really want to see them make this work in a slowed down playoff atmosphere. And I do think that size issue with Mason Plumlee also, who's been playing very well since he played for Team USA. Look, I don't think Brooklyn's gonna win this series, but I think they're gonna be more of a headache for a smaller Atlanta team than a lot of people give them credit for. Joe Johnson being a big player.
I was going to say, keep on forgetting about him too. Yeah, that's right.
So there is a lot of talent, and you can see it happen. And I think Lionel Hollins is a bit of an underrated coach. He did great things with Memphis for years, and I thought kind of got the short end of that stick. I think Atlanta's going to take it, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as a lot of people can think so.
So the last series in the East, the Kings come home. LeBron James back to Cleveland. He grew up in Dayton. Their city hasn't won an NBA title ever. They basically have won one or two sports titles since like 1910.
64.
Yeah, so I mean, it's I think on a list recently it was the number one, worst sports city in America in terms of not winning anything. A lot of pressure on LeBron James' back this year to lead a team just assembled with a rookie coach as well. Do you think he's going to go all the way this year?
It's going to be tough, as I said, especially if Chicago is their opponent in the second round. Listen, they're going to beat Boston in the first round. Boston has been playing magnificent. Brad Stevens, as Jeff Van Gundy astutely noted on the Warrior Pelican broadcast yesterday, Brad Stevens is essentially have to coach 3 teams this season. All right, they've gone through 41 roster players.
Wow.
The Boston Celtics did this year. People figured when they traded away Rajon Rondo and Jeff Green, their 2 best players, that they were tanking the season. But instead, Brad Stevens somehow got them to improve. Isaiah Thomas being a major factor of that. Do they have a chance against Boston? Of course not. Can they win a game in this series? To me, it totally depends on LeBron James. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm a major advocate for LeBron James. The one problem I may have with him is that he tends to play down to the level of his opponent. Mm-hmm. And he will allow a team, because let's hit it here. He is the head of the snake. As long as he plays well, everybody else will play well. Mm-hmm. Kyrie Irving could do his own thing. We all understand that. But LeBron is the head of the snake. He's the leader. As he goes, the team goes. If he plays hard and has the motivation and the commitment to say, you know what, I've come back to Cleveland. We haven't won a championship in this town in any sport since 1964. If that's the motivating factor, if he plays hard all the time, they'll sweep Boston, okay? But I can just see him not playing hard in a game and just basically giving Boston a chance to win. You understand? That's the only knock I will have on LeBron James. Other than that, they're my favorite to come out of the East, despite of what I said about Chicago earlier. I just think Cleveland has too much talent and the motivational factor for LeBron James. Cleveland, to me, is the team that beat in the Eastern Conference.
Phil, I wanted to throw something at you, some Canadian content, since we are in the Great White North. Tristan Thompson is getting some consideration for 6th Man of the Year. How do you think he's going to play out in this series?
Well, Tristan Thompson, let's not forget it's that, plus he's playing for a contract, right? He's looking for some big money, and as the cards are unfolding, all his association with Rich Paul, who's also the agent for LeBron James, I mean, you can kind of see in your crystal ball that he's going to get paid, but I think how he plays in the postseason is going to be the difference between a 13, 14 million and a potential what is now max, which won't be max after the salary cap goes up. But I think Tristan Thompson is just as valuable as almost any front court player. When you look at his mobility on defense, his offensive rebounding, his increased jump shot rate, his free throw percentage. I mean, he's one of those guys that you can play small as a small ball center. You can play him at power forward. You can play him with Kevin Love. You can play him with Mozgov. He's one of those guys that's very interchangeable. And I think it's going to be interesting because we're looking at 2 pretty good power forwards. I mean, when we spoke of Kevin Love last year, we would have said he's a top 10 player, and a lot of people still think he is. But there's some people could be there's something to be said about how they're both producing on this team, and I think Tristan right now is almost as important because of how he plays and the roles he can play, especially on defense. I think this young guy's going to get paid after this year.